In 2020, a Texas student leaves his college apartment around 11 p.m. for a 2-hour drive east to his parents' house for the Christmas holiday, but he never makes it back home. His car is found off course and on a deserted gravel road through the middle of an oil field. His belongings, including the clothes he was wearing, are all scattered along the road, with no trace of him anywhere. Thank you for tuning into the Zerum podcast. This is the story of Jason Landry, gone in the middle of the night. It's December 13th, 2020, and Jason Landry leaves his college apartment in San Marcos, Texas, heading east to his parents' house in Missouri City, Texas, a suburb just outside of Houston. It's a little over 160 miles away. He is a Texas State University student, and he's made this trip plenty of times. He was excited to spend the holiday with his family. He packed up an overnight bag with a PlayStation game console, a laptop, and a plastic tumbler to house his Siamese fighting fish named Sparky. He left his place right before 11 p.m. at night and said goodnight to his roommate. He drove a 2015 silver Nissan Altima. He normally took a route down Highway 80. This road would lead him to the small Texas town of Luling. His phone's digital footprint shows that he picks up his phone and went from using the location app Waze to looking at Snapchat for just a minute. After this, the digital footprint ends. A normal route through Luling would have taken him down East Austin Street and then over to Highway 183, which leads to Interstate 10. After that point, it's a straight shot to Houston. But sometime after midnight, Jason's car was found crashed on Salt Flat Road, north of the highway, leading to Interstate 10. It's unknown why Jason took a different road that night. This was about 23 miles from where he started, and it was off course by about 5 miles north. On December 14th, around 12:30 a.m., a passing driver found Jason's car crashed in between a tree and the fence on Salt Flat Road. This is a gravel road in the middle of an oil field. The car had clear damage from the wreck and the keys were still inside, but Jason was nowhere to be found. A short distance from the crashed car, about 900 feet away, was some of Jason's belongings. The police found a backpack, a phone, his wallet, some marijuana joints he kept in a pill container, and the gaming gear. As they searched further up the road, they found his wristwatch and, oddly enough, his clothes. They found his sandals, shorts, and t-shirt, and even his underwear. North of the crash site, they found some belongings in a plastic bag, a baseball cap, and a plastic tumbler cup with his dead betta fish. Jason's father, Kent Landry, is a lawyer turned pastor. When he learned of the car crash, he immediately headed out to the Luling area to find his son. For some unknown reason, the car wasn't treated like it was a crime scene, and it was towed away. The tow truck driver was interviewed and confirmed that he did not discard any of the belongings from the car. The motive of robbery seemed less likely, since all of his valuables, including the money in his wallet, were left near the crashed car. There was no blood found in the car, but on further inspection of the shorts found on the road, investigators did find bloodstains. This led investigators to believe that perhaps these were the actual shorts he was wearing when the car crashed. The other clothes found on the road are believed to be the clothes he was wearing at the same time of the crash as well. There was no sign of them being forcefully removed. What's eerie about this detail is the temperature that night. It was between 36 and 43 degrees Fahrenheit. Jason's father was upset at the lack of attention to his son's missing case. The police didn't see this as a crime scene, but rather a drunk driver who left their car after crashing into the fence. But eventually, a search and rescue effort was initiated in Caldwell County by many organizations. TXR and the Texas Rangers, the Caldwell County Department staff, and there were 2 nonprofit first responder groups, Texas Search and Rescue and Texas EquaSearch. Over 150 volunteers spent hundreds of hours searching more than 31,000 acres in the surrounding areas. Sonar, scent dogs, horses, and helicopter tactics were used to cover the vast spread of land around the rural Texas town. His father, Kent, refused to leave the area. The Caldwell County judge even allowed Kent to stay in his personal RV, which was just a short distance from the crash site. Many hours of video footage captured from CCTV cameras around Luling were reviewed, but turned up no additional evidence. As of almost a year later, in October 2021, the volunteers were still using computer-generated models and AI to calculate the areas he could have been in, small spaces where he could have fallen or gotten trapped. Since the crash, many theories about how he disappeared have been put forth. A closed head injury, which would account for the lack of blood, but would also explain the belongings outside of the car. He could have suffered post-traumatic amnesia, forgotten where he was, who he was, and started walking away from the car. In traumatic brain injuries, there is a condition called disinhibition. In this disorder, people begin to perform unusual acts and sayings, sometimes things that aren't socially acceptable, such as removing all of your clothes. If he was suffering from a concussion and walked up the road, it is in part conceivable that he could have removed his own clothes for whatever reason, not being totally mentally astute enough to even understand that he was hurt. But this still doesn't explain how he got so far away from the intended route back to his parents' house. He was supposed to take a route east, yet he was heading north in the wrong direction. Another theory is that he was perhaps intoxicated and drove the car into the tree and the fence, and then left the scene of the accident to avoid being caught. He could have suffered from a condition called paradoxal undressing. When people suffer from hypothermic events, this illogical behavior is seen. When the body gets cold, as with a hypothermic condition, you can actually feel a burning sensation on the skin. This is also the last stage before unconsciousness and death. When we are exposed to ultra-cold environments, we will automatically shiver. The skin's receptors will send signals to the brain and tell the hypothalamus to regulate the body's temperature. This reaction causes the muscles to undergo involuntary shiver, which is the rapid contraction and relaxation of the muscle. This movement creates heat, but after a prolonged shivering, the muscles will weaken. The blood vessels will constrict during this time in an attempt to save heat from leaving the body. But that mechanism for vasoconstriction gets tired as well, so the blood vessels will in turn dilate, causing a rush of heat back into the arms and the legs. This combined with mental confusion that may set in with a cold environment will lead a person who is freezing outside to, ironically, start taking their clothes off. But the problem with this theory is that someone with this level of hypothermia is close to death, so he wouldn't have been able to take his clothes off and walk very far. It seems very likely he would have been found having collapsed close to the clothes where he discarded them. Captain Jeff Ferry of Caldwell County believes that Jason ended up naked, unconscious, and possibly carried away by wild animals. And these animals were able to dispose of his body since there was no body found. A small pond about 1,000 yards away from where his car crashed picked up a scent from the search dogs. The dogs hit the area after using the scent from Jason's t-shirts. 8 different search dogs were used, and they all signaled that he could be in the body of water. It took 3 days to slowly drain the pond, but this led to another dead end with no body being found. The wild hog or wild animal theory is one the police department maintains to this day. And while it is certainly a possibility that wild hogs can consume an entire human body, while it is certainly possible that wild hogs can consume an entire body, the lack of blood found, which would be around 1.5 gallons, just doesn't fit this idea. If hogs were able to find Jason's collapsed body, perhaps in a field nearby, it seems likely that there would have been a certain amount of blood that remained on the ground that would have left evidence of such an event taking place. In 2019, a Russian woman was eaten alive after falling into an epileptic emergency while feeding her hogs, but some of her remains were still found in the pen. If wild hogs had eaten Jason, then it's almost certain that the many scent dogs searching just after his disappearance would have found the exact spot, or search teams would have been able to find traces of the parts of his remains. Another theory was that there was another vehicle involved in the crash. Perhaps they hit Jason and then drove off, but the investigators saw no evidence of another vehicle crashing into Jason's Altima. Still another explanation would have been a carjacking gone wrong or some other form of hijack. Could someone have forced Jason to the road north? Was there a huge road rage incident that forced Jason towards Salt Flat Road out of Luling in the wrong direction? Jason's family was adamant that he knew the way back home well and he wouldn't have gotten lost. All of the events leading up to his disappearance have to be pieced together using just his phone records. During the ride to Luling, he used a navigation app called Waze. He FaceTimed a friend, and he used his Snapchat app. His contacts were a friend and an ex-girlfriend. At 11:24 p.m., he stopped using Waze, the navigation app. And at 11:28, just 4 minutes later, he would send a picture to his ex-girlfriend using Snapchat. It was a selfie of him inside the car. But from 8:28, the last time he sent a Snapchat, to around 12:30, the time a passing driver spotted his car, no other communication happened. Whatever happened during the 60 minutes of data silence is the key to this case. There are many facts that are strange, to say the least. Jason was receiving and sending phone messages until 11:28 p.m. He stopped responding to messages on his phone. His car was headed in the wrong direction towards north of Luling, but he was supposed to be driving southeast to pick up on Interstate 10 to Houston. The car crashed. The rear window was shattered, but the airbag had not deployed. The engine was off, but the headlights were still on, and his keys were still in the car. When a local firefighter reported Jason's crashed vehicle, police responded to the scene at about 1:15 a.m. If the car could still run, he could have just driven back down the road towards town. His cell phone was found the next day in the car by his father, Kent. It was between the front driver's seat and the console. Jason could have easily called 911 and gotten help after the crash. The initial thought from investigators was Jason exited the vehicle through the shattered back window. This was because the driver's side door was inches away from a barbed wire fence, and perhaps he tried to get out of the car that way, but he couldn't. Just up the road, his clothes were laid in a pile, but they weren't scattered about. It's almost as if they were taken off and thrown down on top of each other. His wristwatch was placed face up on the ground. Again, not thrown down like it was being discarded. His betta fish was dead, but the plastic tumbler that carried it was placed on the side of the road not far from his backpack. Could he have been forced to strip down before he was taken somewhere else? When Jason's dad, Kent, arrived early that morning at the scene of the accident, the car had already been towed away. There was no police tape, and no one from the police was out looking for his missing son. Kent pulled out his cell phone and began filming the area, the tire tracks on the gravel road, and he started searching on foot. When Jason's parents called to speak to Cristobal Flores, the Texas state trooper who arrived first after the crash was reported, they were told he was off duty and he had gone home. In a later interview with Flores, he said, "Regardless of whether Jason was drunk, stoned, or any of the above, you had what you thought was a naked college student wandering a place he did not know in freezing cold weather with Arctic winds. You need to find that person and save them from themselves. However they get in that situation, find them and help them." End quote. His parents feel like after the police found the marijuana in his backpack, they gave up looking for him. Still another theory was maybe the joints he rolled and any he had smoked were laced with some other drug or chemical that would have caused a mental impairment. Marijuana can easily be laced with cocaine, heroin, or some other psychoactive drug. The marijuana from his bag was examined and tested, but no other chemicals were found mixed with them. In January of 2022, the police decided to release information that initially was withheld from the public. There were audio recordings of the body cam when an officer finds the blood on his discarded underwear. Other material released were Snapchats and messages from his phone detailing marijuana drug use. The Caldwell Police Department eventually admitted that they had left the scene too early, losing the very few first hours, which are the most critical time for the investigation. A former FBI agent, Abel Pena, now leads a cold case nonprofit group named Project Absentist. In 2021, he challenged the initial theory of Jason leaving the scene himself. He suggested that the way Jason's belongings and clothes were placed at the scene weren't put there by Jason, but by someone else, who deliberately put them there. There's also the fact that Jason knew the way back to his parents' house and had driven it many, many times before. It just wasn't congruent with the scene of the accident. Pena offers the idea that perhaps someone else was driving the car when it crashed. Pena also argues that the intersection where he switched to his Snapchat app on his phone was known to be an area of higher crime. If a perpetrator noticed a driver not paying attention and on his phone, perhaps they could have jumped into his car and forced him to drive out the Salt Flat Road. Pena theorizes that someone Jason encountered at the intersection of East Austin Street and Magnolia Avenue beat him up, took his car, and staged the wreck on Salt Flat Road. During the start of Pena's investigation, the Caldwell Police Department seemed helpful, but according to Pena, this relationship quickly soured. They seemed stuck on the wild animal theory, and after a few months they offered no help to further the investigation. He said they weren't eager to follow up on any tips that suggested that Jason could have been the victim of a violent crime. An analysis of his phone was used to calculate his speed just before the crash. This led investigators to discover he was traveling about 35 to 40 miles per hour. At this speed, it could have been hazardous on that type of gravel road. Pena maintains that he was either being followed or being made to drive that fast. The Landry family grew tired of Caldwell County's perceived lack of interest in their case. They requested that the case be turned over to the Cold Case Department of the Texas Attorney General's office. The office took over the investigation in 2022. Kent compared the investigation of his son Jason to Gabby Petito, the young lady who was murdered in 2021, and her body was found in Wyoming's Brigger Teton National Forest. He stated, "They literally searched entire states and found her in some of the most inhospitable terrain around, and we can't find Jason in a cow pasture outside Luling, Texas." Just 6 months before Jason's disappearance, 2 young boys were gunned down several miles from the pasture where Jason's car was found. Clayton Manning, a volunteer firefighter, and his cousin, Lanning Robinson, were checking for smoke in the area when they were hit by more than 50 bullets. The shooter was a 34-year-old male named Byron Haynes. He told his family members after his arrest he was being chased by aliens and had to make sure the men were dead by shooting them in the head. Drugs were very common in this area. In 2022, the sheriff of Caldwell County, Mike Lane, oversaw the largest drug bust in the county's history, seizing over 300 pounds of methamphetamine. Since his disappearance, there have been a few cases that were thought to be linked to Jason's. On December 20th, 2021, a decomposed body was found in a bushy area near the Guadalupe River, almost 100 miles away. Investigators thought this could possibly be Jason, but the body was later identified as Benjamin Tank Lorena, a 16-year-old boy who was also missing. In July of 2022, an odd event took place. Almost 1,800 miles away, an unconscious man bearing a striking resemblance to Jason was found on the streets of Bronx, New York. He was found with no ID, and the police were searching for his identity. Even to the Landry family, this resemblance seemed undeniable. The Texas investigators quickly shared the story of Jason with the New York Police Department and provided them with his fingerprints. The young man turned out to be a resident of Yonkers, New York, placing the mystery of Jason's whereabouts back into the unknown. If you have any information regarding Jason Landry's disappearance, please contact the Caldwell Sheriff's Department at 512-398-6777. A GoFundMe account was set up to assist the already $20,000 reward leading to information about his disappearance, and at the time of this recording, it has amassed to an additional $17,000. I can't imagine the pain of not knowing where your child is. My prayer is for peace for his family and for the discovery of Jason Landry. Thank you for listening to the Zerum podcast. Please subscribe if you're not already so you won't miss any new episodes. Till next time, God bless.